So I have another practical example of a real usage case for adding methods to an object. There's a popular JavaScript library called _JS, and we'll talk more about what libraries are, but for now, think of it as just a bunch of code someone else wrote that we can use. So all that underscore is a bunch of functions that someone else wrote. And we can see them here. Each one of these is a different function. So we've got things like find, every, sum, contains, min, max, sort by, and it doesn't really matter how they work or what they do, but it's important that I show you that there are a lot of them. So underscore namespaces all of them together. It groups them all together inside of an object called underscore, just the underscore character. So you can see this is how you call them. Underscore, I'll make this a little bigger. Underscore dot map. Underscore dot reduce. And that's just done so that all these methods are grouped together so that you know everything that starts with underscore is coming from this underscore library. You didn't write it yourself. We'll eventually talk about how we import a library like underscore. You'll see how we could even write something like underscore eventually. But what I want to show here is not the code itself. I just want to show the fact that everything is grouped inside of an underscore object. So rather than dog space or cat space, they decided to use a really short, memorable character, which is underscore. There's one more thing I want to highlight in this video, which is the keyword this. So in JavaScript, there's a special word this that we can use in different contexts to do different things. So to demonstrate what it does and how it works, I'm going to go ahead and do a quick example. So let's suppose that I'm making an app that has some comments, and I want to have some comment data stored inside of an object, as well as a few methods like print or delete that I want to be stored inside of an object as well, just like we saw with the speak method. So I'm going to define a namespace called comments. So var comments, it's going to be an object, and I'm just going to start with it being empty. Next, I'm going to define the data property, which is just an array of comments. So some silly comments, just like this, and we hit enter. So we have comments, looks like this, where we just have one property data, and that array has 3 different comments in it. So if I wanted to make a method called print, what I could do is define a function separately, just like this, function print, and it takes in an array, and all I want it to do is just console.log each comment. So I could do it in a weird way where I did print, and then I just did a for each. So array.forEach function, and I'll just call it element L. And then I console.log L. So this function right now is not a method. It exists outside of my comments object. And if I wanted to print out comments.data, I would have to run print and then pass in comments.data. So that's what we've been doing up until this point, defining our functions separately in the global window namespace. But if I want to add it to the comments object, all I need to do, I'm going to copy my code here, and I'm going to go back here and say comments.print equals, and I'm going to paste my function. And I can leave this name here. I'm going to get rid of it though, because it's unnecessary to name it there as well. And rather than having it take an array as an argument, I want it to use what we already have inside of comments, which is we already have the data in the same object. So is there a way for me to share the data inside of an object so I can use comments.data inside of comments.print? And the answer is yes. And that's where the this keyword comes in. So I don't need any argument. If all I want this to do is print whatever is in comments.data, instead of array.forEach, I can actually write this.data. So the keyword this is a little bit tricky. In different situations, it means different things. Definitely one of the quirkier parts of JavaScript. A lot of interview questions focus on it, so it's something that even experts will struggle with. We're going to spend a lot more time with the keyword this as we go forward, when we learn about events, when we talk about jQuery, and when we move to the backend and talk about databases as well. So for now, in this case, the word this refers to the object comments. So I'll show you if I hit enter here. Let's look at what comments looks like now. It has 2 things. data, an array, and then this print method. And remember that the print method is referring to this .data. So when we're inside of print, this is referring to the entire object that has data inside of it. So this .data is how we can go from inside of print and access this data. So to use that method now, all I need to do is say comments.print. And we get our 3 comments printed out. So what I've just shown is a really common pattern for how we organize code. We can take some data, put it inside of an object, and then take associated functions and functionality and add them as methods to the same object and use the keyword this to access the data that we predefined. If you're feeling a little bit confused about the keyword this, that's definitely to be expected. We only have just scratched the surface, and as I mentioned, we're going to keep revisiting it over and over. All I want you to understand is that there is a keyword called this. It's a little bit tricky, and in one context, the one that I showed here, by writing this inside of a method, it refers to the object that the method is defined in. Okay, so that's it for objects for now. Very exciting. Next up, we get to finally talk about HTML and CSS interacting with our JavaScript.